Hi, boys and girls. Miss Kathy here from Shaler North Hills Library, and we are doing another installment in our STEAM Superheroes of STEAM program. And today, since it is February, we are going to be focusing on STEAM African Americans because February is Black History Month. And to tell you the truth, there are so many people that I could read books about that did made wonderful contributions that I'm having a really hard time narrowing it down to just the 1 month. But then in March, we have Women's History Month, and there are so many women that have done amazing things that have books written about them that I can share with you. So we may have to continue these themes after the appropriate months in later episodes. But for now, for today, we are going to start with a book about someone you may never have heard of. They're not famous like maybe George Washington Carver you've studied in school and his work with peanuts or whatnot, and we may read about him. I'm not sure yet. Or any of the people, Rosa Parks and certainly Martin Luther King, people like that. No, this is someone who is connected with all of those people, but did something a little bit different on her own and is becoming more famous for that. The book I'm going to read is called Pies from Nowhere: How Georgia Gilmore Sustained the Montgomery Bus Boycott. And sustained means keep going, kept it going for a while. And if you don't know what the Montgomery Bus Boycott is, let's wait and talk about that after the book and see if you can pick up some of the clues from the book. This is by D. Ramito, illustrated by Laura Freeman. And I really like the pictures. Let's see if you like them too. They're big and bold, just like the move that Georgia Gilmore made to help others. Never did anything halfway. She always went for it the whole way. So I'm going to lay this book down and turn the camera around so I can read it to you, and then I'll pick it back up and we'll talk a little bit more about the book, and we'll look at the activity packet that went along with it. So bear with me 1 second here while I get the book set up. And I will turn this around. And trying to make this work. With some here, I could do it. Maybe I can't do that now that it's recording. Okay, I don't think I can turn the book around now that it's recording, actually. So we're just going to read it like this. I'm trying to get in a spot where you'll be able to see all the pictures. When Georgia Gilmore was a young girl, she lived on a farm in Alabama, where she fed the pigs and milked the cows. Georgia did her best to listen to what her mother taught her. Think twice before doing anything you might regret, and never, ever hate anyone. Georgia grew up and soon had a family of her own. She did plenty of cooking along the way, and when it was time for something sweet, she knew just what to do. She'd blend butter and sugar in a bowl to get her homemade pound cake started, and then add tea bags to a pot of water for a new batch of sweet tea. Georgia was a cook in the National Lunch Company in downtown Montgomery, Alabama. Because of segregation laws, the restaurant counter was separated into two sections, one side for white customers, one side for black customers. Georgia knew it was wrong, but that was the way things had always been. Back then, some of the prices listed up on the top: apple pie, 10 cents, grilled cheese, 20 cents, chicken salad, 30 cents. If you've ever been to a restaurant today, you know that's very different than the prices we pay. On December 1st, 1955, Georgia was working at the restaurant when a news alert came over the radio. An African-American woman named Rosa Parks had been arrested for refusing to give up her seat on a bus to a white passenger. Rosa was tired of giving in to rules that were unjust, and she wasn't the only one. Unjust means they weren't fair. The next day, a flyer was passed around the black community in Montgomery asking people to boycott public transportation on Monday. It said, "Please stay off of all buses." Georgia watched as buses drove down the street, one after another, empty. Because she'd been treated poorly by the drivers so many times before, Georgia hadn't ridden the buses for 2 months. Still, she wanted to be a part of the movement she saw growing. Empty, empty. So a boycott means they asked nobody to ride the buses. If that's how you got to work, find a different way. And that would hurt the bus company because they would lose a lot of money. She wasn't one that used the bus, but she wants to do something. Not long after, she went to Holt Street Baptist Church to hear Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speak. The church was full. The crowd overflowed onto the street outside. Large speakers had been set up so everyone could hear. Dr. King spoke about doing good things for one another. He talked about freedom, unity, equality. "We are determined here in Montgomery to work and fight until justice runs down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream." Those were things Georgia believed in, and she was willing to fight for them. So, Georgia decided to help the best way she knew how. She worked with a group of women, and together they purchased the supplies they needed: bread, lettuce, and chickens. And then off they went to cook. The women brought food to the meetings that followed at the church. They sold sandwiches. They sold dinners in their neighborhoods. As the bus boycotters walked and walked, Georgia cooked and cooked. And boy, did the people of Montgomery love her food. Georgia's group donated the profits from their sales to the Montgomery Improvement Association, which helped fund the boycott. But if anyone had found out these women were involved, they could have lost their jobs. So Georgia ran the operation, and the other women acted as secret helpers. And there they are standing in the doorway because they're being secret. But a lot of people are walking now instead of using the buses. And a lot of them are walking to see Mama Georgia's cooking. "See, the way I figure it, people always had to eat, so I made the pies," said Georgia. The women sold baked goods to local stores, groceries, laundromats, and beauty shops, and people paid in cash so they wouldn't be connected to aiding the boycott. Sweet potato pie, peach pie, red velvet cake, 7-Up cake. Only Georgia knew who baked them, and only Georgia knew who bought them. Every Monday and Thursday, Georgia would go early to the boycott strategy meetings at the church. That would be where they plan and figure out the best way to hold the boycott that week and what they should do. She'd walk up to the collection plate and announce how much her group was contributing. There was cheering, clapping, foot stomping. All the money they're making to help this effort. Nobody knows who's making the pies. But whenever people asked where the money came from, she remembered her promise to keep it a secret. Came from nowhere, she'd say. Because of this, her brave group of women bakers became known as the Club from Nowhere. The club not only raised enough to purchase gas for the carpool system that had been set up for the boycott, but they were also able to buy station wagons to aid the effort and help get people where they needed to go. So they could not only carpool, they actually bought cars, like taxis, to drive them around. But Montgomery didn't want their buses continuing to lose money, so the city did what it could to stop the protesters and their efforts. Dr. King and 89 others were arrested for their roles in the boycott, and Georgia was called to speak in court about an instance when a bus driver had mistreated her. After she had already paid, the driver demanded she get off and enter through the back of the bus. When I reached the back door and was about to get on, he shut the back door and pulled off, and I didn't even ride the bus after paying my fare. So I decided right then and there I wasn't going to ride the buses anymore, Georgia testified. Georgia knew she was doing the right thing by standing up for her fellow protesters, but news of the trial spread across the country like wildfire. When the National Lunch Company found out she was part of the boycott, she was fired from her job. Georgia was unemployed and raising 6 children on her own. She needed to find a new way to support her family. Dr. King encouraged her to start her own business. All these years you've worked for somebody else. Now it's time you worked for yourself, he said. He helped her improve the kitchen in her home, and Georgia got new pots and pans and cooking supplies. Word soon got around, and people came to eat at Georgia's. When they came to her house for a meal, they would eat wherever they could find a seat, and if they couldn't find a seat, they'd eat standing up. Georgia loved to talk and joke with her customers and friends. Soon enough, there were long lines to get a meal cooked by her. People ordered meals for delivery, too. Georgia was making hundreds of lunches each day. She packed up fried chicken, black-eyed peas with okra, fresh corn muffins, and apple pie and sent her kids out to deliver them. If you were lucky, you might even get her homemade macaroni and cheese. She was providing good food for her community, but she was also bringing the people of Montgomery together, black and white. Dr. King frequently had meals at George's house. Because she was a big woman with a big personality, he lovingly called her Tiny. And because civil rights leaders knew they could trust Georgia, her home became a place for important and often secret meetings. I just served them and let them talk, she'd say. On November 13th, 1956, Georgia was cooking in her kitchen listening to music on the radio when the station interrupted the song to deliver the news. The Supreme Court had declared that segregation on buses was illegal. The boycotters had won. Georgia was thrilled. People could ride the bus and sit anywhere they desired. So it took taking it all the way to the Supreme Court before that could officially happen. At the next church meeting, Georgia sat in her seat and listened as Dr. King announced that the Montgomery bus boycott was a success. We didn't have to walk no more, said Georgia. Even before Martin Luther King Jr. got up there and told us it was over, we knew it was over, and we knew we had won. Still, there would be more battles to fight, so Georgia Gilmore kept right on cooking. The sign says, "We demand equal rights now." And that is the end of the story, but there is an author's note that is well worth reading. I'm going to turn it this way a little bit to read that part. On December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her bus seat to a white person. At that time, black passengers were only allowed to sit behind the colored sign on buses, and if more whites got on, blacks had to move back. While 2 other women had previously been arrested for fighting segregation laws on buses, Claudette Colvin and Mary Louise Smith, Rosa's arrest finally sparked the Montgomery bus boycott, which began on December 5, 1955. The city tried to stop the boycott by penalizing taxi drivers who charged less for riders who refused to take the bus, giving parking tickets to drivers aiding carpools, and arresting drivers and passengers for overloaded cars. Protesters faced verbal and physical abuse, as well as financial hardships. Despite all of this, the black community persisted. Many whites also aided the boycott by giving rides and making donations, because not everybody felt this was right. On November 13, 1956, the Supreme Court ruled that segregation on buses was unconstitutional. So that was almost a full year after the bus boycott started. However, official orders weren't delivered to city officials for another 5 weeks. The boycott ended on December 20th, 1956, 381 days after it had begun. So by then it was a full over a year. On November 13th, 1956, repeating that part. The Club from Nowhere's fundraising was an important part of keeping the boycott going, especially in the early stages. Their donations were critical, that means very important, in providing gas, cars, and auto maintenance to assist the boycott. They even inspired another group of women called the Friendly Club to sell food and raise money for the cause on the other side of town. Georgia described herself as fiery and said that because of Dr. King, she learned to control her temper and made a lot of friends she wouldn't have made otherwise, both black and white. Those who knew her described Georgia as a good listener and confidant. Her home restaurant on Derrycote Street in Montgomery became a safe meeting place for many civil rights figures. In later years, Dr. King even brought Robert Kennedy and President Lyndon Johnson to Georgia's. President John F. Kennedy once ordered her food for takeout to eat on Air Force One. So she was making food for all these famous people. On the 25th anniversary of the march from Selma to Montgomery, Georgia cooked macaroni and cheese and fried chicken for those commemorating the occasion. But sadly, Georgia became ill and died soon after. After the funeral, her family served the food she had prepared, a fitting tribute to a remarkable woman. Georgia probably wouldn't have had it any other way. And here's a quote from her. "You cannot be afraid if you want to accomplish anything. You got to have the willing, the spirit, and above all, you got to have the get up." Just have the get up and make it happen, huh? And on this page, the sources, that means where this author that wrote this book got information from, and she pulled it all together in one book. There's a number of other good titles in there that may be of interest to you. And we have some other things that may be of interest to you in this packet. There's a first thing listed is a website that you can read about her life a little bit more and listen to an audio recording from many of the people who knew Georgia Gilmore, them speaking about her. So you can actually hear their real voices of people that were her friends talking about her. And it's not long. It's probably, I think it was about 6 minutes or so it doesn't take a lot of time. And there was a story on NPR Radio, National Public Radio, as the webpage here has photos of her working in her own kitchen, and it shows you what her house looked like. And there is a marker outside of it, like a historical marker these days. so that people can still visit her house because it became so famous. This would be for a little bit older kids. A New York Times article about her, or at least if you don't want to read the story, look at the pictures, because all these sites had different pictures, actual photographs of her. In the book, all we see are illustrations, people's drawing of her. But when you see the photographs, it makes it a little bit more clear. Okay, so those were things about the history. And then we go to some of the other activities, learning about measurements in food. And I have included that page in the pack out if anyone's printed out the whole packet. It's got kitchen math measuring worksheets and tells you a lot of different information. If you want to work in the kitchen, a lot of times you have to measure things out. And you have to understand, what does 1 cup mean? What is 1 tablespoon? What is a quarter of a cup or a teaspoon? So these sheets give you lots of good information, and then there are some practice sheets that you can do together, maybe with some adult help if you're not able to do it on your own, converting these things. That means changing them from one to the other. So how many quarts are in 1 gallon? How many cups are in 1 quart? That sort of thing. And they give you a chart at the top. So that's one activity you can do. And looking at how the different sizes of measuring cups. Okay, so that's learning about measurements in food. You could do some baking of your own or some cooking. Make some of the dishes that Gilmore made using Southern recipes that I found the website for Southern cooking, and they're just for kids. So a lot of the foods that were mentioned in there are included on this website, and they're great fun to make in the kitchen. So maybe that can be a family project, and you can make dinner for some people, just like Georgia did for probably hundreds of thousands of people through her lifetime, but at least thousands. And there is definitely a printout of Georgia Gilmore's homemade pound cake recipe. It is actually at the very end of the book as well. But since you all don't have a copy of the book, you can get it online or in this packet, print it out and make that for a dessert. Recipes from this book. And on the back of that, if you print that out, there is a activity, Blank's Recipe for Creating Change. This is from the National Civil Rights Museum. And now you're supposed to fill in your name there, and how would you go about creating change? They only give you 4 lines, but if you need more lines, these are pretty wide apart lines. You could probably draw some other ones in between these ones and get double that number of lines, or continue on another sheet. What do you think needs to be changed these days, and how could someone like you go about doing it? It doesn't have to be something just for important people. Georgia saw a need, and she said, I'm going to help. I'm going to do what I can. And by golly, she did. And it made a huge difference in these people's lives. So think about something small that you might be able to do on a regular basis to help change something that you don't think is right. Okay, and then there is a wonderful website with a lot of pages that you can go to for kids about the kitchen and making recipes, and some of them are included in this packet. I want to show you some of these ones that I did print out. Meet the fearless cook who secretly fed and funded the civil rights movement. Now, this is not from that last website I mentioned, but there is a picture of her, Georgia Gilmore, adjusting her hat for photographers in 1956 during the bus boycott trial of Martin Luther King Jr. She testified, when you pay your fare and they count the money, they don't know the Negro money from the white money. She said all the money is the same, just the people paying it. So that was on the NPR article. And let's see if I have any other pictures to show you. There's a picture of one of the empty buses. A bus driver is all alone on his empty bus as it moves through downtown Montgomery in April 1956, just like drawing in the book. Shows nobody on there. See if there's any other good pictures here. Well, that's it for the pictures. But like I said, you can go to those other websites and see a lot more pictures yourself. And then I printed out some of these pages from this really cool website at the end for kids in the kitchen. Chef Solis A to Z list of cooking supplies. How well do you know the items that live in your kitchen? Match up the cooking item with the right picture. So do you know what these different tools are? You have to know that before you can go work in the kitchen. So let's see if we can match these up together here. An apron. Which one is a picture of an apron? You're going to have to go all the way down to this one on the very, very bottom. Connect apron down to that bottom one. How about baking pans? Things that you put things on when you are going to bake them. Let me do it like this here. Move this down. Baking pans. These look like baking pans to me. That's what I would put my cookies on if I was going to bake them. How about a... Oh, you know what? I think we did that wrong, actually. I think these are the ones they're trying to show you different size pans. And the cookie sheet is going down to, because it's the only one that could work, this one must be the cookie sheet, but there are more than one sheet there. My goodness, Miss Kathy is not doing a very good job here, is she? I did not do this ahead of time, which shows you I maybe should have done that, but you guys aren't doing it ahead of time, so we'll see when we get all the way through if we did this right or not. A grater, that's something that you can get very fine shavings out of when you take something bigger and you rub it up against it. It's got sharp blades though, so that's one of the things better for an adult to probably do, but that's a grater that you hold. A measuring cup, I certainly do know a measuring cup. That's going to be where you measure liquids in most of the time, although you can use other types for non-liquid things. A soup pot. Well, looks like it's got some soup boiling in it already, huh? So let's connect that to the soup pot. A potato peeler to peel those skins off the potato. That's going to be this thing here. This is a blade that goes across and you run your potato over it, and that takes the skin off. Oven mitts, you need those if you're taking anything hot out of the oven. You don't want to burn yourself, so those are the oven mitts. A rolling pin, you use that to roll out your dough when you are making cookies and things. I'm going to go over here on the side and come up to that one because it's all the way up there. A soup ladle is something that you use to scoop up something with. If you want to serve soup in a bowl, you want to use a ladle because that can give you a nice big scoop. A spatula is something that you use to lift something off of a tray or get underneath it. So that's going to be this one here. A strainer is when you dump something into this strainer up here, it is going to let all the water or liquid that's in there out through these holes in the side, and it's going to keep the food that you have in there inside the dish. So let's go up to that one. And a whisk is something to get, a lot of times when you're beating up something and you want it to be light and airy, you use a whisk because it makes it nice and fluffy. So we have one picture here that we didn't use, huh? We got all of our words. So I guess there's an extra one. So actually this could be the cookie sheet, or those could be the cookie sheets, and those could be the baking pans. However, it works. This looks to me more like a cutting board. Oh, I did miss a word. There we go. I did see cutting board now. Sorry about that. You guys are probably sitting there thinking, wait, she didn't do cutting board. There's so many lines going on this sheet. I got totally mixed up on which lines were going where. Okay, so that's that sheet done. We have one more to do like that. If Miss Kathy can do a better job on this one, This one is A to Z list of cooking appliances. Other tools to use in the kitchen. How about a blender? Which one do you think looks like a blender? This one here is going to be a blender. Put stuff in and press the button and it'll blend it all up for you. A can opener is something you use to get the lid off of a can. Some people have an electric one that you plug in. Some people have handheld ones. A crock pot is something you can cook food in for a long time and not have to fuss with it. A food processor, that is something that is going to chop up your food very finely and mix it all together very well. That's what this one over here is going to be. An electric juicer, well there, not everyone has one of those, but I guess they're nice if you have them for making your own juice. A microwave oven, I think everybody has one of those these days. And we know how that works. A mixer is what mixes it all up without you having to do it by hand. You put your mixture in the bowl in the bottom and the blades of the mixer. Get it all mixed up nice and even for you. An oven, that's where you have to do any of your baking stuff. A refrigerator, we all know what a refrigerator is for keeping our food cold, huh? And a toaster is where you put your bread or English muffins or bagels or whatever it may be to make it a little more, toasty. Okay, I think we got everyone on that one, huh? We don't have any pictures left without a line. So, the more of these I do, the better I'm getting. Okay, I think there was one more. Oh, reading a recipe. This is out of that food packet from the other website. Read through the recipe below, then follow the instructions 1 through 5. So this is a typical recipe that you might have to follow. Locate the list of ingredients, draw a bracket to the right of it. So where does it tell you what you need to make this recipe? That's what this part is up top. It tells you how much you need of each of these things. Then down here, it tells you what you're going to do with those things. So it says use a bracket to the right of it. A bracket is one of those funny little things, but you can draw whatever symbol you want. Those are the ingredients. Locate and circle the amounts of the ingredients. So that's what this first thing is. It says we need 3 cups of that, 1 cup of that, 1 cup of that. So we're going to circle the amounts. Okay, put a star next to the yield. A yield tells you how much it makes. Sometimes it tells it in quantity, sometimes it tells it in how many people it serves. This one does both. It says it makes 8 cups total, and that will serve 16 if each person is having a half a cup serving. Draw a box around the cooking temperature. If you're going to bake anything in the oven, you always need to set an oven to the right temperature. And it tells you that in step number 1, preheat the oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Preheat means start heating it up before you put the food in, so it can be warm when you do put the food in. And underline the baking time. The length of time that you are going to bake it, you have to underline. It says in step number 4, bake for 30 minutes. So, those are the things you have to do when you're looking at a recipe. First, you have to make sure you have everything that it tells you you need, the list of ingredients. And then it's always a good idea to read through what you need to do in the recipe before you begin so you can see what's involved. I have to do that multiple times because I keep forgetting and I wonder what's the next step or what am I supposed to be doing now? So that was another activity from that big packet that was in here. That was printed out at the end. Kitchen math measurements. Okay, so hopefully you learned a little bit about the Montgomery bus boycott and how people took a simple stand to protest something that was not right. Back when our country was segregated, that means whites were allowed to do one thing and blacks had to do another. And we know, of course, that's not right. And still have some problems with that these days. Everyone is not treated as fairly as they should be. But maybe there's some little thing you can do, not with blacks and whites necessarily, but some little thing you can do to make sure that you know people that are being treated more fairly or being treated a little bit nicer, whatever it may be. And we can be inspired by Georgia Gilmore, who wasn't anybody famous when she started, but made some small contribution so that she could help in some way. You can order this book yourself if you want through the online ordering system. We are also going to be doing other African American leaders in upcoming weeks, so stay tuned for that. And I hope that everybody stays safe. Stay tuned for the next episode and check out all the other great stuff we have going on online. And thanks for watching today. This has been Miss Kathy from Shaler North Hills Library. Maybe go make a fun recipe and have that as a treat. Bye.